Official science tells us that humanity originated in Africa. This theory is based on well-founded evidence, both direct and indirect. These include archaeological finds, genetic analysis data, and even studies related to the development of myths of different peoples. Today, we'll tell you why conditions for the origin of our species developed in Africa and what evidence confirms the words of scientists. In this issue, we'll also discuss other versions related to this issue. Subscribe to the channel Age of Dinosaurs, and then you'll be the first to know about the release of new videos, and you can share your opinions in the comments. We also encourage everyone to actively support the channel creators with likes. This will help in distributing our videos across the platform and give other science lovers the opportunity to see them. Until recently, the earliest finds related to the activities of modern humans were discovered in Ethiopia. From where they began their dispersal to other continents over land bridges in the period from 60 to 40,000 years. Before that, about 200,000 years ago, earlier human species have traveled the same route, and our ancestors had to win back habitable lands from them. But more modern methods of genetic analysis have shown that the first representatives of the Homo sapiens species appeared much further south. Not in East Africa, but in the territory of modern Botswana. Now, the Kalahari Desert is located in these places, and at the time of the first sapiens, this territory was covered with swamps and rainforests. Global genetic studies help determine the time and place of their residence. The study of the DNA of modern people from different nationalities from all over the world gave a very interesting result. All people on the planet are descendants of one woman, the so-called mitochondrial Eve. Mitochondria are special cellular structures with their own DNA, transmitted exclusively through the maternal line. According to scientists, the descendants of other women of that time did not survive to this day. Another interesting way to confirm the origin of all modern people from one group that came out of Africa is to compare the myths of different peoples. At the beginning of the 20th century, the English researcher James Fraser decided to find references to common plots for all people on the planet in biblical stories. The subject of his interest was the myth of the fall of Adam and Eve. It turned out that different people at different time told the story of the tempting snake in very different ways. Studying the transformation of this myth, the scientist found many interesting patterns. The most interesting thing is that the pre-biblical versions of this myth did not talk about the fall or expulsion from the Garden of Eden. For most people, snakes were a symbol of immortality. This was associated with the ability to shed skin, and people in these legends refused immortality or were deprived of it as punishment. Similar stories were told even before the writing of the Old Testament in many African and Asian tribes. Having compared about 50,000 similar stories from around the world, scientists found out that the story of shedding snakeskin was not known in the north and central part of Eurasia. But in South Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, as well as on the northern coast of Australia, this legend, with minor changes to suit local conditions, has existed for many thousands of years. These transformations completely repeat the path of human settlement in these regions. The American versions of the legend contain elements characteristic of the peoples of Siberia. This confirms the theory of the settlement of North and South America via a land bridge across the Bering Strait. Later, purely African versions of history migrated to America. This happened during the period of active slave trade and the import of live labor to plantations in the United States and other countries. Such conclusions are also confirmed by a comparison of other legends. This means that along the way of their settlement around the world, people told each other the same stories for tens of thousands of years. the languages they spoke gradually changed. Somewhere, they even began to write down such stories in the form of text, or create illustrations on stone and other materials. As they spread across the planet, people added new elements or adapted the story to their way of life. But the general essence was preserved. Of course, the most numerous evidence base confirming the theory of the cradle of humanity's been collected by archaeologists. Research by ethnographers and geneticists only complements the overall picture. These additions also allow us to confirm the conclusions of archaeologists from different sides. At the moment, the official version of the spread of our species across all continents looks like this. About 100,000 years ago, people reached the northern tip of Africa. In the period from 60 to 70,000 years ago, the Middle East and Southeast Asia were populated. 50,000 years ago, the movement towards Australia along the islands of the Pacific Ocean began, which lasted about 10,000 years. 40,000 years ago, after the retreat of glaciers and warming of the climate, the inhabitants of the Middle East moved to Europe and then to Siberia. People crossed the land bridge across the future Bering Strait about 30,000 years ago. And only 11,000 years ago, our ancestors reached the southern coast of South America. During the period described, the depth of the world's oceans was much smaller than it is now. Therefore, the theory of land bridges between the continents seems quite reasonable. But at the same time, it's already obvious that our ancestors were brave and skilled sailors. They sailed from India to Australia on primitive boats and rafts. It's also possible that some of them were able to travel from Madagascar to the same India, independently of the main population that settled on land. There's also a version that individual sailors could continue their journey across the ocean after reaching Australia. These people could have become the first settlers to reach South America, and this happened much earlier than the ancestors of the Indians got there by land. In general, the term cradle of mankind is most often used in relation to a small area in South Africa. Excavations of limestone deposits have been going on there for over a century. A huge number of remains of a wide variety of primitive people have been found in them. Most of them belong to the Australopithecus, and the age of these fossils reaches 3 to 4 million years. But the dating of the finds is constantly being clarified. This is due to the lack of clear stratification of the rock. There are absolutely no volcanoes in this area, and the limestone is a solid uniform mass. Whereas in East Africa, where most likely the first sapiens came from, such stratification is present. Also, in East Africa, the finds are a lot more consistent. Here, you can more accurately trace the process of evolution of primates from primitive hominids to modern humans. There's an opinion that South Africa's always been more isolated from the rest of the world by deserts. In some more favorable climatic periods, there was a movement of eastern species to the south and vice versa, southern to East Africa. But most of the time, the evolution of South African species of ancient people went its own separate way. This explains such a variety of finds and their differences from their closest relatives. So, with a high probability, it can be said that Homo sapiens appeared in East Africa. Why did the African continent create the conditions for the emergence of Homo sapiens? We've already described all of our known ancestors and extinct relatives many times, and the need to adapt to changing living conditions has always been named as the main reason for evolution. By and large, everyone who could not adapt to the new conditions simply died out. And in Africa, throughout the entire existence of the continent, there was a constant change of dry and wet periods. Forests were replaced by savannas, swamps by deserts, and vice versa. such changes served as an excellent incentive for the development of mental abilities and improvement of social interaction of our ancestors. Thanks to this, they were able not only to survive in constantly changing conditions, but also to develop the abilities needed to conquer the entire planet. At the same time, Africa, as the oldest separate continent, has always been inhabited by a huge number of different animals and plants. Geological and climatic conditions contributed not only to the diversity of life forms, but also to the increase in their populations. This helped people solve issues related to obtaining food and developing various types of activities. Many skeptics who are far from real science argue that people could not have originated in Africa. Looking at the modern natural conditions of this continent, it's difficult to believe that any serious efforts are needed to survive there. Such people often say that man could have only appeared in the harsher conditions of the northern climate. At the same time, they forget that the issue here is not the severity of life, but global climate changes over millions of years. Therefore, in pseudoscientific circles, you can find stories about ancient northern civilizations that perished millions of years ago. One of such unfounded sensations can be considered the statement of some pseudoscientists about stone tools found in Siberia that are several million years old. Allegedly, at that time, an island civilization existed in the Arctic Ocean, which later disappeared. Due to a cold snap or another cataclysm, people were forced to move to the continent and then settle further south. But don't forget that the most important evidence for any scientist is the pattern of finds. And these stone choppers were found in a single burial in Yakutia. But if these advanced people gradually migrated from north to south, their path should simply be strewn with similar finds. So far, no one has provided such evidence to scientists, but the real cradle of humanity on the African continent is replete with such patterns. And until new confirmed facts appear, this area will remain the birthplace of our species and the starting point of its settlement on Earth. We're grateful to everyone who watched the video all the way to the very end. If you're interested in this topic, we recommend you familiarize yourself with our other videos posted on this channel. In those videos, you can also learn a lot of other interesting things about the evolution of various living creatures from various periods of our planet's development.